Hello and welcome to On the Corner, the official podcast, pitchlist.com. I'm your host, Eric Samulski, joined, as always, by my co-host on this lovely, sunny Monday afternoon, Nick Pollack.
What is happening? How you doing,
Hello.
Eric?
Hello. Should we pause and start again because the card is super duper off?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we should. We should. I totally forgot about that. Is the thing. Here we go.
Okay. I'll take it from the top here.
Boom.
Hello, welcome to
No. We're doing it live. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for watching. We're going to do it again. Here we go.
Hello and welcome to On the Corner, the official podcast, pitchlist.com. I'm your host, Eric Samulski, on this beautiful sunny Monday afternoon, joined by Nick Pollack. Nick, how are you doing, my friend?
What is happening? I am doing great. I had a pretty lovely weekend.
Oh yeah, what did you do this weekend?
I got engaged yesterday.
You son of a! I told you. I said you're gonna try to surprise me on air. I'm gonna curse, but I didn't. Listen, I didn't, but I did internally. Hey,
yes, she said yes. So I got engaged. Everyone, you didn't know I had any girlfriend. I know. I hid it from you.
You don't have a personal life outside of these podcasts.
I know, right?
You podcast and you write articles. And that's
everything else. I prepared an engagement, and it was wonderful. It was great. And
congratulations.
And now I'm going. Thank you so much. Now I'm going off to Hong Kong for 2 weeks, and then followed by the winter meetings for 4 days, and then also off to Texas for another. So I'll be gone for like a good 3.5 weeks, starting on Wednesday. And I'm glad that we're getting through our top 100, starting with this fiver here.
This is what happens, people. He gets engaged and then he's like, content. Who needs it? I got stuff to do.
Oh gosh, I'm so far behind, Eric.
Yes. Listen, I'm happy to be probably not the first, but maybe the first on air to say congratulations. Super happy for you.
Thank you, Eric.
Couldn't have happened to a better person. And considering I did meet your lovely better half over at First Pitch Arizona. I'm happy for both of you.
Thanks so much, Eric. We're going to talk about pitchers now.
And we are going to do that.
Number 76. Who is that?
Yes. Well, we're starting off going from really good news to just a bummer ranking because I think people are going to be shocked that number 76 here is Kevin Gausman.
Yeah.
How the mighty have fallen. So let me just say, he's fallen for 3 years. And I just want to I'll start off with what we talked about prior to the season, and then you can kind of fill in the blank here. But we said, hey, listen, Kevin Gausman is always going to run high whips because he gives up a lot of hard contact and he gives up a lot of hits because he relies heavily on the sinker or the splitter. Sorry. The fastball gets hit really hard. And so it puts a lot of weight on one pitch to kind of carry him through. And that is a little bit of a risk. And you and I lowered him a little bit in the preseason ranks, but still had him inside the top 10, around the top 10. So what led to this kind of drastic fall from that height?
Yeah. So in the preseason for Kevin Gausman, one of the things I think I left First Pitch Arizona last year leaning on more than I would have liked is the understanding of, look, 200 strikeouts and getting that is a big deal. Mm-hmm. And it's something that happens a decent amount each year. And I try to make sure my rankings are out beforehand because of it and try to stay firm. There is a weight for a lot of the Arizona discussion about 15 teamers and maybe even some best ball discussion, more about volume and understand. And this idea of you get a guy and that's who he is. And I've been really pushing back on it as much as I can, but I couldn't really ignore the fact that Kevin Gausman pushed it all the way to a 30% plus strikeout rate. And then also went consistently every 5 days in 2023. And I said, okay, fine, 185 innings and a 3.16 ERA with that higher strikeout rate. You want to think that the 118 whip can get better, maybe closer down to the 4% walk rate instead of the 7%. But then as the draft season went on, we kept pushing back Kevin Gausman. We collectively, I remember initially he was the third off the board, which I always thought was just what, but we were having him at 8 or 9 or so. And I think by the end of it, he was closer to 12 or 11. I don't know. But nevertheless, it doesn't matter where you had him. Everyone was disappointed because it was a 122 whip, 3.83 ERA and a 21% K rate for Kevin Gausman. And at the end of the day, what happened as Samulski and I were sitting together when there was conversation of Gausman, we're like, they're not talking about the real issue, which is the splitter. The splitter just stopped getting whiffs.
Yeah.
And what does happen is that actually the BABIP gets better. Why? Because the splitters that would normally be whiffs are now in play, and those do get outs. So that is a 282 BABIP this year. And I think that is a product of it. But without the whiffs, you have more opportunity for hits. So that 282 BABIP is actually expressed over more opportunities in play, which is not as good. I'd rather have a higher BABIP, but fewer balls in play.
Right.
When you really think about it, it's like a 32% chance of a hit versus a 28% chance of a hit. It's not really that massive. And this is why you have the higher hit per 9 for Gausman, despite the lower BABIP, which is why the whip is at 122, because the walk rate did not go down. It was at 7% once again. So this is the issue with Gausman. He's not getting whiffs on the thing he needs to get whiffs with. And I don't think that's just going to come back overnight. This is a pitch that was 16% swing strike rate in 2024 when it was 25%, 27%, 22% the previous 3 years. And yes, we did see some more whiffs from Gausman later on, but even when he had them again, 124 whip, 118 whip, he's always been a bad whip guy. See for that ridiculous 2021 season with the Giants where they had the best defense in baseball.
And I'm glad you pointed that season out, because if we really go back and look at it, that 2021 season was the first full season where Kevin Gausman was like a fantasy ace. Like he was good in the COVID shortened 2020 season, so we're not going to take that away from him. But that was just 10 starts, and so grain of salt. But prior to that, that was really when the splitter kind of became a pitch for him. I mean, when he was with Baltimore, he was throwing 180 plus innings a year, but the strikeout rate was like under, like around 21%. And the ERAs were like, listen, a 3.92 ERA back in 2018 is not horrible, but you're not getting strikeouts with that, and it's not great. And the whip also wasn't great. And so we really only have 3 years of Gausman as like a quote unquote reliable fantasy ace. So the fact that the splitter is now leaving him and he is no longer reliable fantasy ace isn't like, a guy like Chris Sale, who's always been elite when he's been on the mound, becoming not good. It's a guy who had 3 really strong seasons on the back of one pitch, starting to lose that pitch a little bit and going back to a pitcher who is maybe fine, but not great.
Right. So with Gausman, I'm not saying that exactly. I'm pretty much saying what you're saying. Fine, not great. And I'm not even saying that he's going to be terrible for your teams. Just keep in mind that if he does have that season again of a 122 whip, that is going to hurt you in a 12-teamer. 3.83 ERA is going to bring you down if you want to be at the top of that category. So yes, he's going to be productive more so in 15-teamers than he's in 12s, because the necessity for that volume at 181 innings, and we should expect him to go every 5 days, is huge. It is a benefit. He had 14 wins this past year. I get the necessity for that. In a 12-teamer, not nearly as the case. Right. And I have him ranked where I say, look, I'd rather just take chances at other guys, and hopefully that can really be that main thing again. I'm not saying that Gausman can't, but believing that a splitter will return for a 34-year-old is kind of hard of a sell. And even when it does, is that whip going to be so amazing too to make you ignore it? It's difficult. I have him at the front end of these kind of, okay, now we're getting a little bit more questionable items. And you have also the upside tier, which is clearly a decision you can make early on. Gausman, you won't necessarily know. I found myself probably ranking him a little further than others just because of I don't want to deal with it. This is my Nick personal preference, as opposed to just saying this is the one you want. But yeah, I think that it's going to be a headache once again for Kevin Gausman. So he is profoundly a hipster, headache-inducing pitcher, stifling the entire roster, just like Toby. But this is on more the volatile highs and lows.
Yeah, nothing more to say there. We'd spent a lot of time on Kevin Gausman. So we're going to move to number 76, who is another former ace who we're seeing drop down the rankings. This one due more to injury. That's number 77, Max Scherzer. We saw a little bit of Scherzer this year, but not a lot. And I feel like this is just a total roll of the dice, and like we don't know what we're going to get from him next year.
There's a part of me that really wanted to put him above Gausman, and I still might ultimately do that, because Max Scherzer, if he's pitching, he's going to help you. I mean, it's possible that he just does not look good at all, and then that's that. We'll have clarity of it. But for the most part, Max Scherzer has been a productive fantasy player since 2012. And even then, the landscape of pitching might be even different, that you'll take the 127 whip because he had so many strikeouts and a 16-win season. So that's over 12 years of production. Even last year, 395 ERA, yes, but 115 whip and a 23% K rate. Like, it wasn't that he was just detrimental to your team. So I see Scherzer as someone that you take at the very end, everyone kind of forgets about now, of just saying, oh yeah, but that's just done. I'm not going to do this. If he's healthy and pitching out of the gate, I don't know where he's going to sign. He's going to sign somewhere. Then great. You start him until it doesn't work. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. This is absolutely the end rounds of your fantasy draft. You should have drafted other guys already. And if you're looking for something saying, no, I need more stability, then there is another tier coming soon, around the 80s for that. But this is the tail end of this upside flyer, potential hipster scenario. And Scherzer, I think, is the perfect example of, like, there still could be value in this, and you'll be able to tell early on if you're going to get
it. I agree there. I mean, at some point, a guy with the upside of Scherzer, you have to take late in drafts just because. And this seems like a good point to take that guy. I think 78 is interesting here because we're talking about two pitchers who are on the decline, and kind of falling in drafts. And I think this guy, at least, especially according to First Pitch Arizona, and you and I have been joking about this pitcher for almost a calendar year now.
Oh my gosh.
And he seems to be, as my co-host on the Roto World podcast, Scott Pianowski, would say, on the escalator. And that's number 78, Bowden Francis, who ended the season on a tremendous note. And I think many people would suggest, like, why are we not buying into what happened and kind of banking on that, not continuing, but like even half continuing? And why isn't he higher than this?
Right. So, Bowden Francis. Pretty much Bowden Francis is on this escalator since August 7th. And in that run, it was 1.53 ERA, 0.53 whip across 9 starts. I mean, that's just bonkers. There was, of course, that stretch where he had 7, 8, 7, 12 strikeouts, 4 straight games of at least 7 innings, and 5 of 6, including 2 8-inning games. Oh my gosh. And that 8-inning game, by the way, it was 1 strikeout, 1 walk, and 1 earned run and 1 hit against the Mets, which is weird. Long story short, with Bowden Francis, that stretch didn't seem very believable, with 99% left on base rate and a 1.25 BABIP and sub 10% home run fly ball rate, etc., etc. At the end of the day, he throws this 4-seamer that worked in the zone. It's at 92 and change. It has good IVB. It's like around, it's hinting at 17 inches of vert, which is good. Now, like, we're very happy with that. When you see that, like, oh yeah, that's good vert on that 4-seamer. By the end of it, it was 16 and a half. His extension is not 7 feet, but it's above average, 6.8. Cool. Tack angle, neutral. But again, it comes in at 92 and change, right? I see this pitch and I say, okay, this is good, but it's not an elite 4-seamer. For this to be elite, it would need to have like 96 velocity. You have to have that too. You can't just be relying on vert. And you can say, oh, he has amazing command of it at times, but a lot of times he just throws it over the plate and it's just, okay, there it is, and that's done. The question I have for everyone listening is, what else is there with Bowden Francis? And I can't really tell you what. If you want to say the splitter usage,
well, that is what people are going to point to. I was just saying that.
What are you going to say about the splitter usage?
Well, I'm not going to say much about the splitter usage, because there is an indication that, like, oh, Bowden Francis started throwing the splitter midway through the season. He didn't start throwing the splitter midway through the season. He had been throwing the splitter. It's just that he had been throwing the curveball far more. Like, the curveball was a pitch that was like anywhere from like 25% to like 40 or 50% of the time in his early starts. When he came back into the rotation, the curveball was not like all but scrapped, but I mean, early on, he's throwing that pitch like 3% of the time, 8% of the time, 9% of the time. It is interesting to note that the curveball usage does tick up as the season goes on, as the splitter usage falls down as the season goes on. And so you're really kind of looking at a 1 month, because that happened at the beginning of September. You're really looking at a 1 month sample where he basically abandoned the curveball and leaned heavily into the splitter. And, it's worth looking into, because maybe that's a pitch mix change that continues for him. In those 9 games since he came back into the rotation, that was on August 7th was the first start.
Yep.
He had a 1.53 ERA, a 0.53 WHIP, a 26.5% strikeout rate, just a 3.3% walk rate, 5.13 PLV on the whole as a pitch, as his
almost
arsenal.
an 80% four-seamer strike rate in that time.
Yeah, I mean, he listen, there are positive things to say. Obviously, that is not going to be something that continues that kind of success. I mean, a 44% strikeout rate on the splitter in that span, just a 2.1% walk rate, just an 11.5% swinging strike rate, and a 25% CSW. So that doesn't reek of this is an elite pitch.
Right. And really the main thing I do want to mention is that the splitter at times was really good. He had some games of 25% to 30% usage with it. His put away rate was fine. He would throw it mostly in 2 strike counts. And when he had those big strikeout games, the splitter actually was good. And you guys know me, a good splitter in a good moment is I'm here saying it's amazing when it works.
Mm-hmm.
When it doesn't is the problem, because it goes in and out. And it did with Bowden Francis as well. The curveball had to take over a little bit more. The slider isn't very good. The whole package with Bowden Francis is one that says, oh, you can have moments, but reliable is not what you are.
Mm-hmm.
And we saw that even in the first half. And we saw that Bowden Francis struggled to really get his fastball over the plate as he wanted to, or at least have success with it. His secondaries weren't there for him, and it was really rough to watch. So I'm out on Bowden Francis. I recognize that he had a really nice run. Guys have really nice runs all the time. And I like them when they're paired with an arsenal that has multiple pieces, including one that is truly elite and will be a foundation. I don't believe that Bowden Francis's four-seamer is that piece. I think it's a fool's errand to go and get Bowden Francis instead of others who have much clearer paths to both success and failure that will know, will have so much more clarity about making that decision. I would be so shocked, and I'm ready to say I'm wrong, if Bowden Francis becomes a consistent producer throughout the entire year. But if he does, it's because he's not the same guy from last year. Something will have changed in March that we'll be able to see that says, hey, look, you are not the same guy. So I'm not banking on that happening. Thus, he's at 78.
Yeah. Again, intriguing. I'm going to approach him the same way I approached him last year, which is an intriguing late round pick in drafts, because I think we've seen that there is something intriguing, but I'm not all of a sudden treating him like he's going to be a 2025 breakout starter.
Right. I prefer Bates, not Bowden.
Boom. Look at this just elitist Northeast liberal arts school college jokes. And on that note, we're going to take a little break to hear some ads.
I couldn't help myself, Eric.
Also, the cards haven't been changing, FYI.
Oh, I'll make sure that it does with good stuff.
With number 79.
Just put that in the notes. Yeah.
Okay. On to number 79. An interesting pitcher who I also didn't rank in my top 150, and that's just, again, because I wasn't sure that he was going to be in the rotation. But your number 79 starter is Atlanta Braves starter, reliever, who knows, jack of all trades, Grant Holmes.
Grant Holmes, the real estate broker.
Obviously, you assume he's going to, or you are ranking him as if he's in the rotation. We could, we talk about
honestly, it. Honestly, I don't know. I mean, I'm putting him here because it's still a little bit of a question mark. I think if Grant Holmes is clearly in the rotation entering the year, I would maybe even have him in the 60s or so. Just because I think Grant Holmes is a really good pitcher. He's of the classic Cleveland make of having 2 excellent secondaries for swinging strikes, and then a fastball that can get hit hard, but we want to make sure that it doesn't. And actually, looking at it here for the season, Grant Holmes had a 35% ICR in his four-seamer, which is absolutely mind-boggling to me. As far as its pitch shape, it's pedestrian across the board. Below average verts, 6 feet of extension, slightly steep attack angle, 94, 95, but he spots it well. And he mixes it enough that it's 35% usage, really a third of the time with a slider and a curveball and a cutter. The cutter is not really utilized so much. I think that he might lean into it a little bit more next year. It's a tool mostly for, actually, I take that back. It's against both righties and lefties. The cutter is used by Grant Holmes. The slider and the curveball kind of take turns as lefties see the curveball more than the slider. Slider, of course, is reserved for right-handers, and boy, does this thing destroy right-handers. 25% swing strike rate at a 67% strike rate. And this is a pitch that formerly Oakland, did not teach Grant Holmes, came to Atlanta, and they said, hey, here's a slider. As if, what? How do you not teach someone a slider? It's like the most deadly right-handed pitch. Everyone should try one at some point. And you did, and it's absolutely filthy. The curveball also was a 67% strike pitch for, I don't know, a 23% swing strike rate. That's over half of the pitches that right-handers saw. And then against lefties, both of the same two breaking balls, at least 23% swing strike rate on both, around 50% usage. Seeing that with those massive high strike rates, over 73% strikes in both of those, absolutely bonkers. Amazing. It's really about that four-seamer not getting in hard. He was able to avoid it this past year. I'm a fan of Grant Holmes. I think he's an above-average command guy, 2 excellent secondaries to get whiffs, and that should work out if you go every 5 days. Atlanta was a little tepid pushing him in starts, which is understandable. He was transitioning into the position. He had some starts in the middle of the year, 70 pitches, then 98 and 95. And then he wasn't needed anymore, and he went back to the pen. This is when Reynaldo Lopez came back. And then by the end of the year, it was 78, 62, and 53. But this was also the last part of the year. That last one, the 53, was the win against the Mets in 4 innings. That was the second game of it, and they were being very cautious, but he dominated 4 innings and 7 Ks, 0 earned runs, 1 hit, 1 walk. Long story short, Grant Holmes, if he is starting, this feels very clear to me of an effective pitcher in a great situation. You have a good offense, a good defense, winning ball club. They will let you go 90 plus pitches. You have you have the tools to be better than a 21% strikeout rate. That's actually the funniest part about this to me. I mean, I'm sorry, that's as a reliever, 25% overall. But yeah, he is made to be a stud starter because he shouldn't have more than a 25% strikeout rate with those 2 breaking balls being so effective. Grant Holmes.
Yeah.
I love him.
Grant Holmes. I'm glad you brought that up. Again, my ranking of him or my not ranking of him was more just about whether I just don't think he's going to be in the rotation. A fully healthy Braves rotation that I expect to either bring back Max Fried or sign somebody comparable. I'm not like, Grant Holmes can't be in there because they have Griffin Canning now. Like that's
so. Here's the situation right now, as of today, which is the middle of November. Chris Sale, Reynaldo Lopez, Spencer Schwallenbach, very clearly in the rotation for Atlanta. Then it's Griffin Canning and Ian Anderson.
Yes.
This is according to Roster Resource. Yes, I very much expect somebody to be added to this rotation. That said, I don't think that Griffin Canning is better than Grant Holmes.
Right.
I don't think that Ian Anderson is better than Grant Holmes. I think also Grant Holmes displayed his ability to be a starter effectively. So I would imagine he's very much in that mix in the spring. We'll be monitoring it a ton. Chris Sale could easily get hurt. Something that happens. Sure. There it is. And at the very least, Grant Holmes becomes someone you don't pick up right away, but you see this essentially the moment that someone goes down, he's the next option. You pick him up for your teams.
Yeah. I think Holmes enters that, like AJ Smith-Shawver, Hurston Waldrop, like, hey, we might battle it out for a spot in the rotation in spring training. Who can hold down this spot until Spencer Strider comes back in June or whatever? And then we
right.
But again, we thought the Braves
right?
Right. We thought the Braves were doing that this year, and then guys were in the rotation all year long. So you never really know. We're going to end with one of our most talked about starting pitchers of the year. We talk about him all the time, mostly because he's hurt and he comes back and he's hurt and he comes back. And then we talk about him every return. But your number 80th ranked starter is Edward Cabrera. I feel like it's old hat by now, like what he could be if he just, et cetera, et cetera. But we're still expecting him to get another shot in the rotation in Miami next year. And you're hopeful that maybe one day he'll put this all together with a little bit better command.
Oh yeah. I can't quit him because I'll put it this way. There are a lot of guys that I've seen in my day who have bad command and who have these ridiculous walk rates. And that's just why everyone's going to say he's not going to be good, which is a very quick and easy. And I get it. 11% walk rate or higher. Eric Cabrera's entire career is 11.8 this past year, 11.3 in 2022, 15% in 99 innings in 2023. I get it, guys. I've watched a lot of players in my day, and most of them, when they have a high walk rate, you can see it in their mechanics. You can see the violent mechanics, the how fast they go into, they speed up, they're falling off this and that. And it's always surprised me watching Eric Cabrera because his mechanics are not bad. It's not this out of whack chaos cross body. Where is this thing going? Like, I watch him, I go, no, this is good. This should work. So there are games that if you've watched Eric Cabrera, especially early in the spring, early in the year, Eric Cabrera was actually doing the thing. When he first started this year on April 15th, he had 10 strikeouts in 6 innings with 1 walk against the Giants. And then the next 4 games were 3 walks, 2 walks, 4 walks, and 4 walks. And it's just, you're so close. You're right there. The big problem for Edward Cabrera has been 4-seamer control. And mostly that is against left-handers. 61% strike rate with 32% usage this past season. In 2023, that was 54% strikes in 33% usage. So getting better on the 4-seamer. However, I'm very much of a believer in his slider. And the changeup, actually, I'm really shocked to see after throwing 67% strikes with it against against right-handers this year, only a 56% strike rate against lefties for that changeup. And there's your problem. It was 64% last year. So look, I'll put it all succinctly in a bow. Edward Cabrera has an absurdly good changeup that comes in at 93. It's so hard to hit. A curveball that has been pretty reliable as well. And then also a slider that he's added this year. They threw about 16% of the time to right-handers. And guess what? It had a 61% strike rate, 14% swing strike rate with a 20% ICR. That's such a good offering. I expect Eric Cabrera to throw more of those, become more comfortable, change up curveball, slider, and then surprise with the 4-seamer in sinker. It's right there in front of him. And what's so good about this rank to me is that you can know quickly. You can just see a big walk game and be out. It's all right. Maybe it's just one walk game, whatever. No one will touch him. But if you see in spring, he's throwing more sliders against lefties maybe, or more against righties. He's moving back from the 4-seamer. He has his changeup working more so against left-handers for strikes. Like, these are little things that you can actually spot with Eric Cabrera. It's not just complete shrug randomness.
Yeah.
And that's why he's ranked where he is. It's not about, I know he's going to do this, you're going to hold him. It's that you're going to get the signs of it. And when he does, the dude hasn't had an under 25% strikeout rate since he really began starting in 2022. The potential is there. He's hard to hit. And I just want it to just click. It's just right there. But if it doesn't, move on. Easy.
I'm not going to lie. Even if it was a shrug, like whether it's going to work or not, at this point in the draft, it's worth taking a gamble on because he seems locked into a rotation spot. And you're talking about a pick near near 100, where you're just like, let's just see if it clicks at one point in time. And these are the type of gambles that you take at this point.
What do you think the odds are that Eric Cabrera is traded before opening day?
I would say slim. I think slim.
Okay.
I don't think that he has done enough to boost his trade value right now to be the one getting dealt.
Oh man.
That's just my.
Then that's exactly why he should be. That's why some team should come in and give him an aggressive.
Yeah, offer. I mean, I think somebody might take a gamble. I think it's more likely that like somebody like Luzardo or Braxton Garrett gets dealt, not because they're more attractive, but because I think the Marlins would be more inclined to just get whatever they can get at this point for them. And then see where
man, if Albert Cabrera leaves the Marlins and is able to get into an organization that I think would tinker in some way, I would be, I'd be so on board. Watch the Astros get him. That'd be cool. Yeah, that'd be fun. Anyway, this is a very long one.
Sorry, this was a long one. We're going to go shorter for the next ones because we need to, people. We're getting towards the end of the top 100. So continue with us or go back to the early ones, whatever you want to do. 5 pitchers at a time, getting through Nick's top 100. We're going to keep doing that, starting with the 81st pitcher on the next episode. So make sure you check us there. I'm Eric Samulski, Pelican.
I'm Nick Pollack, the Lion.
And congratulations again to Nick Pollack. We'll see you on the next episode.
All right, you ready to keep going?
Yes. You want to jump right in?
Yeah, 1 second, guys. 1 second. Be right there.
Do you see the Cubs thing right now?
No.
They just hired Tyler Zombro, the former pitcher who's like heading up Tread Athletics.
Oh yeah, I know. I text him. Yeah.
Yeah, they hired him as a special assistant. They hired him the way the Red Sox hired Kyle Bodie.
Oh, amazing.
So we'll see what he does in that organization, if anything.
That's funny. Yeah. Hey, everyone watching. Yeah. I text Tyler. I also text Tyone, but I'm like, oh, hey. All right.
Do it together.
Right.
We'll start this one at 31:45 just because I'm writing it.
Here we go.
Hello and welcome to On the Corner, the official podcast of pitcherlist.com. I'm your host, Eric Samulski, joined on a journey through the top 100 by Nick Pollack. Nick, we are outside of the top 80. We're in the home stretch.
Yeah. And these guys are not going to sound like they should be outside the top 80, should they?
Well, no, it's interesting. These are we've done the young upside guys. We've done the veterans on the way down, but huge name value. And these are guys where it's like, oh yeah, they're all pretty solid. Well, they've all been pretty good. Why are they down here? And so we'll cover all of that right now, starting with your 81st ranked pitcher who you were asked about constantly during First Pitch Arizona. Why is Christopher Sanchez down here outside of the top 80?
I know, right? All right. I'll put this very succinctly. This is the point where you say, okay, look, I don't want to play those games, Nick. I want something that I plug in my lineup and it's not the worst thing ever. Could easily just have a good April and that's cool. And I can move from there. Cool. These are those guys. I view them all either as I just don't want to deal with it. I won't know the answer if you were having a breakout season likely or not, if you are more of the same. Also, they're just generally productive and they're cool. And I'm probably going to be wrestling where to put them on the top 100 list the entire season because I don't think that they have that 25% plus strikeout upside. It may be around 23% or so. Maybe they become a Holly at some point, but I think they have general flaws with their whip or just what they do that it's going to be a little difficult to discern. And I think the leader of that is Christopher Sanchez, who is a win guy. If you need to chase wins, you should go for him. 11 wins, though. Why is that? Because he's a little volatile. And he had a 124 whip this past year with a 20% K rate. This is Toby Central, right? And these really are your Toby guys that are not necessarily saying they're bad. It's just they're not really going to carry that elite upside. And you're going to look at them the entire year and go, should I be swapping them out? Like, are they boring? And I don't draft Tobys. I draft for guys that could potentially be major impact pitchers, SP3 on my team or something along those lines, and draft them and get rid of them and move to someone else. Because if you're looking for a Toby, you can find them in season. So Christopher Sanchez, what does he do really well? We all know it. It's a changeup. It demolishes right-handers. It's lovely. It's awesome. It's great. I'm so happy. Now, the problem is that there really isn't so much excellent about Christopher Sanchez. A good example against right-handers, that changeup is so good. 27% ICR, 38% usage. But the sinker, 45% usage and a 46% ICR. But the slider, 17% usage, not enough called strikes, just 16% called strike rate and a 40% ICR. Good CSW, 32%. But you want to see more than that, really, from the called strike range. And then against lefties, it does perform well. 18% usage, 63% strike rate, 25% ICR. The changeup actually does really well there too. And the sinker does really well against lefties. And that's nice to see Christopher Sanchez as a lefty killer, but you got to be a righty killer to really survive consistently through the year. And the fact that it's only the changeup and it's not paired with a four-seamer, it's not paired with an away sinker. It's actually a sinker that likes to go inside to right-handers, which is really frustrating to watch at times. It's just a package that to me doesn't push the envelope enough. Think of it kind of like Framber Valdez, but he needs a better slider. And if you believe that the slider is going to get better, great. But I don't.
Yeah.
I mean, it's that simple. So Christopher Sanchez is solid. He's going to help get you wins, keep the ERA a little bit down, but not really going to be a 25% strikeout rate guy. He's going to have a whip that's higher than you want.
I think like it goes just on repeat. Remember this whole episode for all 5 of these guys. Nick and I are ranking more prominently for 12-team leagues than 15-team leagues. It is going to be something we would repeat for all of these guys. Christopher Sanchez will be higher if you're in a 15-team league because there's value in the stability and the team quality and all of that kind of stuff. In a 12-team league, that is more accessible on the waiver wire, so it's not something you chase as much in drafts. So just remember that, including for your number 82 pitcher, who a lot of people rostered this year because he was tremendous out of nowhere for the Brewers. But the profile is kind of a shoulder shrug in terms of what you're getting for fantasy value. I find it hard to believe we're going to get ratios returning like we did in 2024 for your number 82nd ranked starter, Tobias Myers.
Yeah, there's a lot of potential in Tobias Myers, and I didn't know where to put him because Tobias Myers actually does have a lot of intriguing elements inside of his arsenal. It's a 5-pitch mix. You can even argue it's a 6 with some random sinkers showing up. But it's based on a 3-pitch mix against right-handers and then a 4-pitch mix against lefties. And then this curveball just kind of appears every so often for like 5% usage or something. But what Tobias Myers does really well is he throws a 4-seamer with a ton of vert on it at about 6.7 extension and somewhat flat attack angle at 93. And this pitch is the root of everything with him. I mean, he's actually a pretty good command pitcher with that 4-seamer. I remember watching him against the Yankees. I know this game he allowed like 3 home runs or so, but in general, leading up to that, just good command really and approach of everything he does. And he also throws a cutter inside the zone with it. That I think the combination of the two for strikes is a big deal of just deception. It's not that much softer. It's only 4 ticks softer. Inside the zone a lot. And then there's a bigger slider to right-handers that they have to deal with. So you have that bridge cutter in there and then the slider. That slider only a 14% swing strike rate. I think this is one of the major areas that Tobias Myers could improve upon is finding that better swing strike rate pitch against against right-handers to really take that strikeout rate away up from 22% and actually sustain it really at 23 to 25. I hope to see some development there. The major element of intrigue for me, though, is against lefties, and really I hope to see it turn into a thing that he throws against right-handers, is this changeup. I am in love with how Tobias Myers' changeup looks. It is perfection of an Estrada-esque changeup, especially with the 4-seamer on top of it. He just cannot be consistent with it. It's like a sub 50% strike rate, but man, is it so good when he executes it. And I think that's a pitch that can turn into a lefty and a righty weapon for him. So when I think about Tobias Myers for the year, I think about a guy that has at least 3 pitches against both sides of the plate, if not 4, which adds more confusion and gets more out of that 4-seamer than you normally expect. A little bit more out of the cutter too, as he mix and matches those two. And I want to think that Milwaukee is actually a decent pitch development team. I saw a fantastic chart from Steve, who works at Baseball Perspectives and does their B Pro stuff. And a chart that says when a player is traded to another team or signs with a new team, how did their stuff grades change? And the Brewers had the biggest impact positively. So I want to imagine that Tobias Myers can hopefully make some tweaks entering his sophomore year, get stability on that changeup. Because if he does, I mean, it's with above average command, you can imagine the 4-seamer, really good vert on it. The changeup falls down underneath, and then you have the slider and the cutter as well mixed in. I think there is a really intriguing repertoire here where hopefully he can pull down the hit per 9 from 8.2, hopefully closer to 7. And everything else can just kind of be the same at a 22% strikeout rate, at 6% walk rate. I think is actually a possibility for him. It's just really a question of, okay, cool. Can you keep your home run rate down and your left on base rate down? It'll be nice. It's intriguing for Tobias Myers, but most likely he's just going to be a Toby throughout the year.
Yeah, and remember, like, I know he's been on a bunch of teams. He's 26 years old, so it's not like he's been designated for assignment by all these teams and he's like a 30-year-old journeyman. Like, he is still a young pitcher, was 24 when the Brewers got him, and then spent a whole year in their minor league system, and then was 25, turning 26 this season. So, like, he's still a young pitcher they were tinkering with. Obviously, the changes have been impactful. I think he's in their rotation next year. Like, I know he came out of nowhere this year, but I don't think like he's on thin ice. And so, if you don't need strikeouts, he's a great get. Like, I don't think he's going to get you a lot of strikeouts, and that's fine. But, he's pretty solid across the board in a lot of things in a team that I expect to be relatively good next year.
Yeah, I mean, he had a 22% strikeout rate last year. I think there is that potential that changeup does take off, but if it's really without it still, he's fine. He's going to be that 19% strikeout rate Toby kind of guy.
Yeah. But I'm not looking at this. This is not a high upside pick. This is just
I can see how it works for Tobias Myers, but I'm not banking on that happening. Also, it might take some time during the season for us to see that.
Yes. Your number 83 ranked starter. I think is in the rotation, but he had to fight for a rotation spot this year. And we don't really know, I guess, the health of some of the other pitchers, some young pitchers coming up. But we had a pretty good year for Cody Bradford in Texas. And I'm curious, again, I guess he falls into the same range as all these other guys where there's nothing bad you could say about him. Just maybe the ceiling there's not really a ceiling there in the way that we would want with some of the guys who get drafted before him or ranked before him.
Yeah, Cody Bradford is a perfect example of having an extension and being a lefty. And what I mean by that is he has a four-seamer that comes with 7 feet plus of extension and 17 inches of IVB, if you think of it like Tyler Anderson, but just with a better extension. And then a changeup that is absolutely filthy that falls underneath. His changeup PLV is 5.54 as a destroyed right-handers for a 39% ICR, and then lefties also was still used 16% of the time for a 37% ICR. I love this combination. He's a really good command guy. We saw that one game against Arizona where it was bad, and everyone goes, "Oh, well, there it is. It's over." And it came back. He was fine after that. One game against Arizona shouldn't have to find him. And the curveball is the main offering as a mix-up pitch against right-handers. Effective this year, about 60% strike rate. Hopefully he's a little bit better next year. But was the main thing against with the slider against lefties. I'm actually surprised he only threw 7% curveballs against them. But 20% sliders, high strike rate on that, got hit really hard. I hope to see that Cody Bradford switches to the curveball there. But the four-seamer, I know it might surprise people, 90 miles per hour, but with that extension and good location of it and mixing it with the changeup, it is a really good tandem. Sure. I think that we are, I think I'm personally super fine with four-seamers at 90 to 92 as long as it comes with a lead extension. If there's another element to it that is excellent. And to hear that he has two of them with the vert and with the with extension is great. I think he's just super good, like a boring, like underrated player that people are not really going to touch. And he is my backup plan in drafts of just look, like I need to get starts this opening weekend. I need something here and there. Okay, cool. Cody Bradford should be fine. Yeah. I'm excited also to dive more into guys like Cody Bradford for my February article, just because I'll have a better sense of the rotations by March of opening weekends. And I can really play my game of, hey, let's get a start of Cody Bradford before I get the SP number 5 on another team, because they wouldn't have started yet and he'll be on the wire. So I can get my early value, see if I like this and stick with it before going and trying something else. The worst feeling ever is where someone else has drafted a player and he's done well in his first 2 starts and they have their answer while you're still waiting for your SP5 to make a start. And then you realize the team only goes 4 the first time. And then you got to go 10 days before they make a start, before you know anything. And you feel like, oh, I can't drop him. I haven't even seen him yet. It's the worst, guys. Just avoid that.
And Cody Bradford, listen, the minor league stats aren't great, but it was a solid 2023 in AAA. I think he probably ends up as more of like a 3.8, 3.9 ERA guy just based on who he was in the minors. But again, all of what you said holds firm in that he is a solid, high floor pitcher on a team that I think will be better next year than they were this year. We got a couple interesting guys to talk about, potentially guys with more upside than these three that we have already discussed. But we're going to get to those guys after this break. If you were doing this ranking on June 1st, and you would have told people that your number 84th ranked starter was going to be Cutter Crawford, people would have said, Nick, you're a crazy person. Yeah. But obviously the second half of the season happened. Home runs are a major issue for Cutter Crawford. They probably will continue to be in Fenway. And so I think we've seen a pitcher who will have some strong stretches and flashes and, has potentially some more swing and miss upside than some of the guys that came before him. But the ratio stability is not quite what you get from like a Christopher Sanchez or, a Tobias Myers or things like that.
Yeah. Cutter Crawford's ICR, that is the contact he allows against lefties on his four seamer, he throws over 34% of the time, 48% against lefties. Okay. Be like, Nick, come on. Righties. That's what's important. Oh, right. That was 50%. Terrible. And I do think that it is a product of him being a sweeper as opposed to a slider guy, because he is so over the top, Cutter Crawford, just like Nick Pivetta, where it is very obvious when he pulls down his arm angle to go down and they can pick up. Is this the cutter? Is it the sweeper? Is it the four seamer? So he does have a ton of vert. It's just not as effective as you would think, having 19 inches of vert or something, 90th percentile. Sadly, based on his delivery, it's not as effective as you'd want it to be. A sub 10%, I mean, right at 10% swing strike rate, despite that vert, should tell you everything there. Mm-hmm. And the best pitch for Cutter Crawford as the season went on, because remember, we were talking about it, and I was worried about Cutter Crawford in the first couple months, but I was still encouraged just because he was getting strikeouts and everything, was the fact that he didn't have that leader pitch. He didn't have that in my back pocket. I know I have this elite thing to get me out of any jam. It did turn into the eponymous cutter for Crawford, but it's still not enough in my view. And that really needs to be like a 45% usage pitch and pulling down the four-seamer when against right-handers for him to really take off. I don't love the fact that it's still the sweeper as his second one. What is interesting about Cutter Crawford, though, is that he does have more weapons against lefties. He does use the splitter and the curveball. And yes, you say, oh, no, Nick, you hate splitters. Sure, but it's not his number two. It's just there when he has it. And when he utilizes it, 31% ICR, 63% strike rate. This is a case where Cutter Crawford knows if he has it in a certain game. 30% put away rate this past year with that splitter for Crawford, which is cool. And then he has a curveball that is really just a show me pitch, 25% called strike rate. And it's really four-seamer cutter for the most part against lefties. At the end of the day, I don't like the fact that he's in Fenway. I think that he is a home run target because the four-seamer just is more predictable than we want it to be. And I worry that we're just going to have a volatile year. He does not have the efficiency in his arsenal to constantly throw strikes and get outs, considering how much the four-seamer gets demolished. Yep. So I can't lean in on this because I think it's just a hipster play, heading inducing pitcher stifling the entire roster. It's why Nick Pivetta is also down here as well. It's why Tanner Houck is down here. All three of those guys, the ones that we were really in on entering the year, I think we've gotten a better sense of just what they do and how effective it is. Also, I think the league has figured them out. They understand, like, oh yeah, they don't throw four-seamers, guys. We got to change the book on them. And it's not going their way in this regard. So I don't really know what to do with them. So I stuck them down here.
Yeah. Would not be a surprise to me if Cutter Crawford is not on the Red Sox next year. I think they're going to trade a starter in the offseason. I think they're heavily invested in getting starting pitching, one or two guys. And I think that means they'll have to clear rotation spots. And so I expect, obviously they just inked Bayo to an extension. I don't think Houck is going after the season that he just had. So I think it would not Pavetta's back because Pivetta may decline that qualifying offer. So we'll see. But yeah, so just something to consider. I think that he might be gone. Somebody who also might be gone from their team based on reports that he is going to reject the qualifying offer from the Mets. Not a surprise. Is your 85th ranked starting pitcher, Sean Manaea. But Nick, he decided to throw like Chris Sale, and it worked. So why won't that just continue in 2025?
Oh man, I so wish it does. I really do. Like Sean Manaea and I, we've been back and forth for ages. I just remember 2019 being so into him in 2020 because of the 121 ERA he came back with and 27% strikeout rate and being like, that's what he should be doing and all of this stuff. And I think if you look at the numbers of the last 5 years, I don't like that phrase when you look at the numbers, but if there is a number that sticks out the most, it's the hit per 9 over the last 5 years. 9.5, 9.0, 8.8, 8.0, 6.6 this past year. That is so shockingly low. You generally don't see sub 7 unless you are a bona fide ace. And even then, it's like usually closer to 7, like around 7 or so. And that 8 number seems right in my view. Yes, Sean Manaea did lower his arm angle. Yes, the sinker / four-seamer / whatever the heck that is was absurdly effective kind of out of nowhere. And this is the way I'll put it. Sean Manaea put his arm angle lower. It was lower. It's harder to do because you get less consistency with your release point and where you're trying to locate the ball. Just think of it this way. When you're throwing up top and down, it's a lot easier to make simple adjustments and to keep the ball up or down. When you're coming completely sidearm, it's really tough to get the exact timing to go inside and outside. That did mean that Manaea was easier at staying upstairs because it pretty much just fell across his arm angle. But Manaea was so good at getting that up and inside to right-handers. That spot up in glove side, very consistent when he was inside of that groove. That is a groove. That is something that Sean Manaea, it goes in and out of throughout his entire career. I don't think that's something that's just going to stick. And I think also the book will be out on him a little bit more next year. I think it's a great run, and we have no idea if it's going to really stick for next season. I think it's going to be one of those, okay, that was a nice run. Hopefully he can go on it again when he's in a groove. There is zero guarantee that Manaea is going to pick up where he left off. The offseason is dark and full of terrors. It is the great wall of fantasy baseball performance, especially for guys like Manaea that are more ratio focused and field focused. So I'm just generally out on this. It could very well work. Manaea was someone who just went up and down on my list all year because we would see those moments and then they go away and then we'd see them go away. I hope this kind of change sticks and he has that feel again, but it's just not worth it for me to chase it.
Yeah. I will say just a prediction on here. I do think Manaea probably just goes back to the Mets. I think you get pitchers, especially in the later part of their career, who have success under the direction of a particular organization and the way that organization has worked with them. I think they tend to want to stay, and the Mets have the money to keep him. And so that would be my prediction. Yeah, so any kind of like, any sort of overall context of like, can Manaea do it again? I think the organizational philosophy will remain the same. The pitch mix changes will probably stay. The arm angle will probably stay, whatever. And we'll see if he can keep it going. But we have a long track record of who Manaea is. And it is a useful and valuable pitcher. It is probably not a major fantasy difference maker, but it's somebody who will be on your rosters or on somebody in your league's rosters of all sizes at some point or at multiple points during the season.
I do want to make a correction. He is 71% high lock in that stretch. It was actually more away, 45% away location, 31% middle, and 25% glove location from Manaea during that stretch from July 30th onward. But it is all up in that way, and it just doesn't seem right to me. It just doesn't seem like that should be as successful as it was. And just to showcase how successful, 167 BABIP for that sinker across 53% usage in that time with about a 70% strike rate. That's not going to be something that sticks. 35% ICR is good, but that speaks to like a 25% ICR, and it isn't that pitch.
Okay. Nick versus Sean Manaea, 2023.
All right, I want him to be great, baby.
We'll see you there.
I want you to not have a 92-mile-per-hour fastball. Make it 93, 95 like you did.
He did one day. One day he did. We'll see if he can do it again. We'll see you back as we continue to talk about more starting pitchers heading into the 2025 season. I'm Eric Samulski, the Pelican.
I'm Nick Pollack, the Lion.
And we'll see you on the next episode of On the Corner. Jump right in.
Let's go.
All right, we'll start it at 55.
Should be a quicker one, I think.
How dare you? It's all Red Sox. 2, 1. Hello and welcome to another episode of On the Corner. I'm your host, Eric Samulski, joined by my co-host, the man himself, the list maker, Nick Pollack. Nick, how you doing?
Hi. What's going on? What is happening? Let's talk more pitchers.
We're continuing. We're towards the back half. We're definitely in the back half. We are close to the final few episodes here of going through Nick's top 100, 5 pitchers at a time. I am obviously thrilled about this particular episode because this is the Red Sox episode. We're going to talk about a lot of Red Sox pitching here, and I'm going to shame Nick into just ranking them all so lowly. Starting with Rick's 86th ranked pitcher.
Yeah.
A guy that we were both in on coming into the year, and a guy that I am back in on again next year. Nick is not. Number 86, Brian Bayo.
Yeah, Brian Bayo. Yeah.
I talked about Brian Bayo at First Pitch Arizona. So I'm just going to lay out what my case was.
Please.
On that. So coming into this year, you and I talked a lot about, Brian Bayo is working on a slider. Brian Bayo is working on a slider. You know, we would love that. We want to see that slider add swing and miss to his arsenal. And for a lot of what he did a lot of the year, that slider was actually pretty good. So he threw the slider 40% of the time to righties this year after throwing it 22% of the time to righties in 2023. Swinging strike rate on it went from 10% to 16%. The strike rate on it went from 54% to 62%. So he was able to command it a little better. The command of the pitch got better as the season went on too, because from July 1st on, he had a 66% strike rate on it, 24% strikeout minus walk ratio on the slider from July 1st on. Yes, it has a high ICR. So we don't love that it gives up a lot of contact. But the issue is that for me is the slider got a lot better. The slider became a swing and miss pitch, 24% put away rate on the slider. It was what we wanted it to be. It was that the changeup disappeared as the slider got better. The changeup was his bread and butter pitch. Also, even with the changeup being terrible, Bayo still had a near 19% swinging strike rate to lefties. That's pretty good considering he didn't have a pitch that had been a good swing and miss pitch to lefties for him. So I'm not confident, but I have him ranked higher than you do. I have him in my 60s somewhere. So not like I don't have him as some like top 50 starter, but I just say, okay, he checked the box that we wanted him to check coming into this year. It opened up a new box, but the box is, can he get back the pitch that was his best pitch coming into the year? And I think we're going to see the pieces come together a little bit more for him. And so I expect the slider to stay and the changeup to come back a little bit. He doesn't have a good four-seam fastball. His sinker is fine. It's just a pitch. So that will keep the ceiling from being like he's not some ace. He's not going to have a major breakout. But I think Brian Bayo is going to have a pretty good season in 2025.
I see this as Christopher Sanchez from the right side. And when you think about it that way, and they go, oh, wait, hold on a second. Christopher Sanchez should be better against righties because it's the changeup side. And Bayo has it against the lefties. I don't think the slider is all that special for Brian Bayo. I want it to be, but it really wasn't like the destroyer of worlds against right-handers. That we wanted to be 16% swing strike rate this past year, 41% ICR. The sinker was effective, 34% ICR against righties as you want it to be. But I think also when it comes to Sanchez versus Bayo, I trust more wins and going deeper into games more efficient. Actually, when it comes to efficiency and pitches per out, Christopher Sanchez is one of like the best efficient pitchers, which is no surprise really because he absolutely destroys left-handers with the sinker inside, as we talked about in a previous podcast. And Bayo kind of doesn't have that kind of same demolition against same-handedness. So long story short, Bayo doesn't have that elite command, in my view, to create that foundation. We saw him go back and forth between all three pitches this past year. Is it possible Bayo clicks in and does the thing that we wanted him to do all last year? Absolutely. Of course, that's an opportunity. I also think that I'm not going to go and chase that specifically to happen with Brian Bayo. I don't feel as if I need to put myself on harm's way for that early in the year. because even if it does click for like 2 or 3 starts, I am not as confident that Bayo is going to continue that as I am other pitchers. And in the end, I'm just saying, okay, if Bayo does click, what does that really turn into? It's possible that it's like a 6-inning and a 23 to 25% strikeout rate guy. Still think the hit per nine is going to be high enough that it's like a 115 whip or like a 110. ERA shouldn't really be under 3 or something when it does. So the ceiling that you're really hoping for by taking the leap into Bayo, not as important for 12 teamers, more so for 15 teamers. And all that together creates a guy that I put this late in my rankings. I really wish it does pan out, though. It was like the first year with that slider fully ingrained into the rotation, into the arsenal. So hopefully Bayo does put it all together and take another step forward in 2025.
Yeah, and again, when I'm saying like I have him in my 60s, so to me, like I still don't think the cost is going to be that much to get Bayo. I don't think people are taking him really high. Again, we'll see.
The cost is your draft pick. It's the last round or something like that. That's really, or your roster spot early is really what I'm thinking about with cost.
And I'm okay with that. I think, it is a fine late round gamble to me on a pitcher with upside on what I expect to be a good team as well.
There's so many. So yeah, take your favorite one, y'all. That's what we're encouraging.
To me, more upside than the next guy who we have seen do this a number of times. There's no knock on your number 80. Sorry, I went to the last episode just to compare numbers. But there's no knock on your number 87 starter, Merrill Kelly, because we've seen him be a solid starting pitcher before. But we've also seen that like the ceiling is not really there. We know who Merrill Kelly is. We're probably not going to tell you anything on this short podcast that you don't know about Merrill Kelly. He's fine. He's solid. He will have some strong stretches. He's going to be on a team that will probably contend. And you're not going to be upset about having him on your team. But in a 15-team league, he's going to be more valuable to you than in a 12-team league.
Yeah, I mean, if you even want to reflect on 2023 and say like, oh, it was a lost year, 2024, whatever, fine. It's still 119 whip. I mean, it's and I quote that just by saying, look, whip does matter a lot. That was a 9% walk rate. You got better on that. That absolutely can be different. Also had a low hit per nine in that one, 7.2. That got raised to 8.2 because the defense got worse for Arizona. And I think that's a huge deal. Merrill Kelly does a thing with cutters, changeups, and four seamers. And for the most part, I actually saw him do that effectively in 2024. In the previous 2 years, though, Merrill Kelly improved with his four-seamer swing strike rate as well. He talked to Renee Deckert about it in 2023. And I remember him saying, yeah, I guess it's just kind of a product of my four-seamer and changeup looking a little bit more similar this year. Sometimes my four-seamer is getting higher up than I really want it to be. And that's kind of getting some more whiffs here and there. And to me, that's like, oh, there really isn't a big change. It's just kind of going that way. And it's not something that we should lean in heavily for the future for Merrill Kelly. And what do you know? It was 11% swing strike rate, 11.6. And this past year was a 9%. Not a huge surprise in my book. So I think the 25+% strikeout rate we saw in 2023 is a very clear anomaly. 21% seems about right that we saw from 2024. It makes sense given his arsenal. And it's fine. He is an absolute Toby. You're not really going to, you're going to be happy with this in a 15-teamer. In a 12-teamer, it's okay. I know there are going to be moments this year where you feel like you should be adding someone else and you have Merrill Kelly and you go, I can't, he's just been working. I can't really get rid of that. And you know that the second you drop him, someone else is going to pick him up. That said, I don't want to really be going after this out of the gate because I want to think that I can shoot for higher than Merrill Kelly on my staff throughout the year.
Yeah, Merrill Kelly's a perfect guy who is on the wire. There will be guys like Merrill Kelly on the wire in 12-team leagues where like you're not gaining a lot by taking him in drafts. Right. It's the opposite a little bit of your number 88th ranked starter because this guy is basically all stuff and the results that have not yet really caught up to stuff. And that's Nick Pivetta, who could be back with the Red Sox, was extended a qualifying offer, but there are reports that he might test free agency, so we don't really know where he's going to be. Listen, Pivetta has been solid. He started kind of when he was with the Phillies, there was he's fragile. He's not going to throw too many innings. But he's been a solid, innings eater for the Red Sox. Nothing that really harms you. there's some strong stretches because his stuff will still pop on stuff metrics and things like that. And so he goes on some hot streaks, but he's incredibly inconsistent. I don't know that he has really kind of settled on an attack plan that works for him all the time. And, you know, the whirly bird didn't quite carry over like we thought it would from last year. And so now he's down here at 88.
Yeah. The, one of the biggest examples of four-seamer sweeper approach not helping out because of the sweeper being a much lower arm angle, very, very steep arm angle on the four-seamer, 0.1 height adjusted VAA, which is so unfortunate because it is 19 inches of vert and a 6.8 extension. And yes, how does he get that vert? He has that extreme arm angle, fine. But this is why you see a 54% ICR against right-handers who see the sweeper more often. But then against left-handers is a little bit different for Nick Pivetta, as he's not throwing the sweeper. So it's a 35% ICR on the four-seamer, which is much better tunneled with the curveball at 29% usage. It's why he has reverse splits on that four-seamer. And that's really it, though. That's all he does is four-seamer curve to lefties and then four-seamer sweeper to righties. Yes, there are some cutters. There are some sliders. But I think Nick Pivetta at his best in 2023 was when the cutter was involved more. There's more of this bridge pitch that allowed him to not be as stark of a difference and obvious, I think, for hitters when he was going against righties, for example. And I just don't want to deal with this anymore. I really don't. I know that if you need strikeouts, yes, he is a strikeout guy, 31% and 29% the past 2 years across 145 innings. I get it. The whip isn't bad either. This is an ERA play. I think he got worse as the year went on as well. So I think there's this big stuff in the beginning and then kind of fell off, especially as players figured it out. With Pivetta and the whole Red Sox approach. This is a tale as old as time of just being frustrated with Nick Pivetta. And I understand if you want to chase that whip and that strikeout rate, I have no problem if you want to do that. I think I'm lower on Nick Pivetta than others are because, again, I don't want to deal with it. It's going to be a thing of, I don't know if it's good. I don't know if it's bad. I don't think I'm going to be able to buy in on it. It's too volatile. It's too I don't know. Home runs will be there. He hasn't had a sub 1.3 homer per 9 ever. It's just so frustrating. And I just don't want to deal with it. So it's up to you guys. If you want to push up Nick Pivetta, by all means, I just have him down here.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I was in on Pivetta in a few places coming into this year, and I don't, again, barring a change in where he winds up that maybe is an organization that makes that, but again, we've seen him in multiple organizations. We've seen him tinker and we've seen him add pitches and we've seen him go on strong stretches. And I'll be open to picking him up on waivers if he's in the middle of a streak that I think looks realistic. But I in a 12-team league, I'm probably going to go in a different direction. Potentially like your number 89th ranked starter, who we'll get to after this break.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching live. This is so much better. Oh my gosh.
Okay. You ready?
Yep.
Nick Pivetta's teammate, your number 89th ranked starter, Tanner Houck. Nick, this guy is coming off an incredible season. Why is he 89 for you?
Yeah, you know why though. Why?
But I don't.
Say the word. Say the word.
Inconsistent. He can't get out.
What is the peak of inconsistency when it comes to an Arsenal?
Yeah, you don't like his splitter.
Oh my gosh, the splitter.
You don't like his splitter. You don't like that he relies on it so much. But
it's not his best. But it's not his best everything pitch in the beginning, and it was everything
at the pitch, end. Though it's his number 2 pitch.
Yeah, but against lefties, it's what he needed. So what did we talk about with Tanner Houck in the preseason? We said, look, Houck has this amazing slider sinker combination that destroys right-handers. He doesn't have anything reliable against left-handers. That's everything. And it became a 40% usage pitch against lefties. At the beginning of the year, he was so good at lining that up glove side away. And by the end of the year, it wasn't terrible, but it wasn't as incredible as it was before. It was about a 36% ICR by the end, 62% strike rate. But it wasn't the put away pitch it was before. 9% put away rate from July 22nd onwards, final 11 games. And I just look, I see Tanner Houck. I see someone who had gotten in a really good groove early on, faced some really beneficial matchups. So did the entire Red Sox crew through the first 2 months of the year, and was in that groove, lost it, can't really get it back. That it's just that simple. I think they should be good against right-handers with the slider and the sinker. I think against left-handers, it's still going to be a struggle with that splitter being such a focus of his attack. And I honestly, I might find myself pushing Houck above the other three of Bayo and Crawford and Pivetta, because it makes more sense. Look, you should be able to take down right-handers, and hopefully, half the time you could take down lefties. But the thing is, a slider also lost its feel in starts too. It wasn't that he always had those pitches. There are a lot of games where all of a sudden it wasn't this big strike pitch. Guys were sitting on it more. They understood the approach of Tanner Houck much, much better. I feel in many ways that we are not necessarily at the same point that we were last year, but the hope is a little bit diminished, as I can't tell you that Tanner Houck is going to have that splitter throughout the entire year. I can't even tell you he's going to have it at the beginning of the year. I can't tell you that he's going to have his amazing sinker and slider feel as well. So,
let me push back a little bit.
Please.
In addition to the lefty thing, the conundrum, which we talked about, and the splitter, to your point on the splitter, we kept looking for what was this pitch for lefties, and it wound up being the splitter, and that's great. We also talked, because the report came out in spring training, and I remember talking about it on the podcast, that Tanner Houck also had been dealing with back issues that had resulted in mechanical problems. He shifted his mechanics. He healed up his back. He felt like he was driving more directly home, or more directly towards home plate, and cleaning up those mechanical issues he felt was a big thing for his success. He had a career high zone rate. He had a career high strike rate. He had a career low walk rate at just 6.5%. All things that back up that the mechanical tweak and the more kind of direct down the slope, down the mound drive toward home plate made him a little bit more easier, or made him more accurate in and around the zone. So I think that's a change that isn't just connected to the splitter. That's just a change in general. And then you're talking about falling off in the second half of the year. Tanner Houck threw 178 and 2/3 innings. He had never thrown more than 106 innings before.
Yep.
So a lot of that feel of the splitter, the slider coming and going, could very well be, hey, that pitch was just flashing really elite early in the year, and it's not as elite in the second half of the season. It could also be a guy in his first full season as a true starter. I mean, he was a full starter in 2023, but he only threw 106 innings due to injury, who was wearing down as the year went on. And when you're wearing down and you're fatigued, and the Red Sox had skipped some starts, moved him back a little bit, they knew that he was wearing down. He just lost some of the consistency with his pitches. So could you see Tanner Houck in his second kind of full year as a starter with these better mechanics and this new pitch mix, not maybe produce a 3.12 ERA, but just produce another strong mid-threes ERA? The strikeout rate wasn't really high, so that is something to keep in mind. He's not going to get you tons of strikeouts, but I think we could look at, I don't think there's any reason that we shouldn't expect another solid season from Tanner Houck, where the ratios are strong on a good team. And I think that maybe warrants being a little bit higher in your rankings.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, I might come around to at least have it above the other Red Sox guys. It may be closer to 81. Maybe I get him into the 70s or so. That said, I want to talk about, again, that second half. So it was the July 22nd all the way onward. 4.23 ERA, 1.35 WHIP, 16% K rate. And I understand the argument. Okay, cool. He's wearing down. That makes sense. I would also associate wearing down normally with diminished velocity, right? And that's actually the opposite of Tanner Houck. He was throwing 94 to 95 at times, when throwing 92 and 93 earlier in the season. And I'm not quite sold on the I'm fatigued and now I'm locating worse, or I'm just I can't locate or have my split or anything like that. He's throwing harder, and he did that over, I'm not talking about the 57 pitches or the 60 pitches. I'm talking about the 108 pitch game, the 90 pitch game, stuff like that. So I guess overall, when I think about Tanner Houck, I say, okay, do I believe that he's going to have that splitter field for the year? Probably not. Do I believe that that his sinker slider combination is just so good against righties that he's just going to always beat right-handed batters, and lefties is just half the time going to be good or going to be bad? Maybe. It's still inconsistent, and I think that's really the issue that I have most with Tanner Houck is I don't know what we're going to get, and I don't know when we get something good if it's going to stay good. I think that's really the hardest part for me, and why I've grouped Houck with all the other Red Sox guys and everyone here in the 80s and after is I think at least in the other upside tier, I can say this is good. You're going to stay good more so than I can with Tanner Houck. Also with the ceiling, I don't think we're going to see that initial ceiling that we saw again. I mean, that was just stupid. We all know that. So when it comes to what you're chancing for, Eric Cabrera to me, I know it sounds crazy, but when that click happens, there is much more sustainable dominance I see from a guy like Eric Cabrera. I'm not saying that the likelihood is the same or whatever, but that is why I'm chasing that one over Houck. I think I have been more convinced, though, of at least pushing up Houck past like Bayo and pretty much right next to Christopher Sanchez. But at the very least, I probably won't be having Tanner Houck on my teams this year.
Okay, fair. A lot of talk about Tanner Houck, probably not as much talk about your 90th ranked starter because he's a guy we've seen do the same thing basically every single season. It's Jose Barrios. I feel like at this point we just kind of know who he is, and that's not a knock on him because it's not bad, but it's also not great. And now instead of maybe years of us projecting him for more, we've kind of just settled on like he is who he is, and that's fine in, deeper formats, and in a 12-teamer, it might not be that much better than a waiver wire pitcher.
I cannot believe this. If you guys know pitcher list lore, first of all, hats off to you. You guys are the best. You might know that Jose Barrios has a nickname called the Great Undulator. And the reason for this is because, say for, I want to say 2022, every single year, Jose Barrios has found a way to just be like 3.75 ERA, essentially above a between 3.5 and 3.9 ERA, and a whip somewhere between 115, 125, really 123, and it's just always is just there, right? It can be going really well, and he'll figure it out, and then or lose it, and then come back. The entire season is just one giant sine wave. An undulating flag, if you want to know the word to undulate, that's the example, right? And the flag in the wind. And here's the situation. Finally, Jose Barrios is okay. He has a 3.38 ERA and a 1.13 whip, both better than the two metrics that we established to be the Great Undulator. And he has one game left, which is against the Miami Marlins. And what does he do? 3 innings, 6 earned runs, 9 base runners. He ends the season at a 3.6 ERA and a 1.15 whip. He did it. He got back to it on the last day of the season.
He wanted to. It was a goal.
Oh my gosh. It's hilarious to me. Sorry for that, but that's just like, I can't believe it. Jose Barrios' value, you're going to see in player raters being super high. Why? Because he got 16 wins. He threw 192 innings. He's the most stable as far as how many starts you're going to get. The dude has not missed a game since he became a starter in 2017 fully. 32 starts, 32, 12, 32, 32, 32, 32. He just starts. You know you're going to get this. But the thing is it going to help your team or hurt your team? And that's always the question. He has been a Toby for a bit now, and he stabilized himself in 2023 with a sinker instead of the four-seamer as a focus. Generally, what we see every year from Barrios is the curveball wakes up for periods of time and becomes that amazing breaking ball we want it to be. And then it falls off, and then it comes back, and then it falls off. Is his sinker getting destroyed? Is it not? So with Barrios, it's the perfect 15-team play of plug and play and be done. In your 12-teamer, he is the perfect Toby of just, you don't really want to be reliant on Jose Barrios if you don't have to. If you're in a quality start league, he had 21 last year, and he's going to be more valuable in a quality start league because he will be able to go 6 innings a fair number of times. But man, It's just so funny of like the most, what you're going to get pitcher in the majors for the whole year while not knowing what you're going to get in one start.
Mm-hmm.
Unreal.
I love it. A beautiful conundrum that Jose Barrios. Beautiful conundrums abound in the next episodes as we continue down the final 10 pitchers of the top 200. And if you want to keep going back, listen to them. Obviously, bookmark them if you want for your drafts. We'll be counting down all these guys, and then Nick and I will have a longer episode where we go through some of the guys outside the top 100 that we are most interested in, or just want to chit chat about. We'll continue chit chatting on the next episodes. I'm Eric Samulski, the Pelican.
I'm Nick Pollack, the Lion. And
we'll see you for the final 10 pitchers of the top 200. All right.
Can we do 10? Can we do them?
Can we do 10 and 40 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay.
So when is your out?
I don't have a hard out.
But what? Give me one.
Let's go 3:45.
Yep. Done. Go.
Okay. But no, you need to give me 60 seconds right now.
Okay. Go.
Okay.
We'll be back, y'all. Oh, yeah, I'm not standing anymore. I can't. Oh, I'm too old for this. That feels good to sit down. Gotta fill up my McClanahan. Some more water. You guys are wondering, around 4:30, I'm going to start live streaming because I have to write the Rangers today. All right.
You
good?
Are you
ready? Yes, I'm very much ready and sitting down now because I'm too tired.
I stood up because I needed to.
Yeah.
All right. I'm gonna start it at 1:22.
Okay.
Hello and welcome to another episode of On the Corner, the official podcast of PitcherList.com. I'm your host, Eric Samulski, joined on the journey through the top 200 by Nick Pollack. Nick, how you doing?
What is happening? Oh, yes, we have 10 to go, and we hope you enjoy it. Here we go.
Yeah, we're gonna dive right in for these final 10. We're starting at number 91, Mr. Michael Wacha. Again, we said this a lot on our last episode, that you and I are ranking primarily for 12-teamers. I feel like that's relevant to the ranking of Michael Wacha. Because Wacha, with his innings and his just overall solid body of work, is much more useful in a 15-team league. In a 12-team league, he kind of feels like somebody you could get off the waiver wire.
Yeah, and what Michael Wacha does so well is he has just one of the best changeups in the game. He throws it against both right-handers and left-handers. It is stupid hard to hit, and everything else is just trying to set up that changeup as much as possible. He throws it 35 to 40% of the time. The four-seamer is a bad pitch. Sinker works well against righties. And really the question is, okay, lefties can just throw more and more changeups. Hopefully the cutter can be effective once again. It's not really that good. And it's just really the changeup does everything for him. Mm-hmm. Thing is, though, in Kansas City, it's a good situation to be in. It's also really interesting to see that in the beginning of the year, there was a conversation with me and Eno about Seth Lugo versus Michael Wacha. And I believed in Wacha doing more of the same thing. And it was a 3.22 ERA last year and a 1.16 whip. And now it's a 3.35 ERA and a 1.19 whip. Pretty much the same thing, but I didn't expect Lugo to go and do whatever he just did. But guess what? Since the beginning of May or mid-May, Wacha had the better ERA. So just something to note there. Don't forget about Michael Wacha and his amazing changeup. Hopefully he can continue to work in the four-seamer sinker cutter enough, and maybe even some of those sliders against right-handers to just figure out a way to get back to that changeup.
So look, even if you lost, you didn't really lose. You know what I mean? You didn't really lose. It was pretty even.
Really
all wins all the time. Number 92, you were yelled at about this man for like the first 6 weeks of the season.
Who were you? We both were.
We both were. How could you not rank Ranger Suarez as a top 20 starting pitcher? He has turned the corner. He is a legit ace. That obviously didn't pan out, and now you have Ranger Suarez down at number 92. But I assume that you are approaching 2025 viewing Ranger Suarez in the same way you viewed him coming into 2024, coming into 2023. Like, he just is kind of the same dude we have always thought he was.
Exactly. Really, the impressive stretch for Ranger Suarez was the first 11 games of the year. He had a bad game after that, and he had a couple fine ones, but it wasn't the demonstrative "I'm dope and I deserve an ace is going to ace" label, as it was through that Coors game on May 26th. That was a 1.75 ERA, 0.82 WHIP with a 28% strikeout rate. And what was going on at that point? Well, of course, the changeup was just amazing. The location and everything was amazing. He was essentially just destroying in every facet of the game. 26% ICR with a 59% strike rate and 24% swing strike rate on that changeup in that time for Ranger Suarez. A really good curveball as well. Four-seamer wasn't getting hit. Sinker was a 30% ICR despite 32% usage. Like, all of this stuff was cooking for him. And as we normally see with these, especially with lefties, you can have these runs where you're just down and away, killing it, then able to go inside to righties when you need to, and then you have a nullifier for lefties. Like, that is what a Vargas rule is. Ranger Suarez absolutely showcased the hyperbolic best of that. Mm-hmm. And then it faded, as it always does with these guys. Yes, he got hurt involved with it, but even in that short stint after that Coors game, it was 2 innings where he got removed a little bit with scare of injury and then came back, and it was not quite as overwhelming. He had 20 strikeouts in 4 games. That's 5 Ks each, which is good and productive, but like not really that. And then it really started to fall off. That led to that injury for the next 4 starts. And when he came back, it was just normal, fine. So if you look at the full year, 3.46 ERA, 120 with 23% K rate, it doesn't actually look like much, but it is those 2 halves. And I'm not saying that Suarez won't have that run again. It's what happened in 2023. We saw Suarez have those pockets of amazing ability, and then it fades. We saw that in his first year in 2021. When he became a starter, he was a sub-2 ERA. We saw that in 2022. He was actually doing really poorly until actually by August, September, it then picked up. This is always what he does. So for me, if you're drafting Ranger Suarez, you're saying that run is going to be right away. Mm-hmm. And I can't buy that. I'm just going to say, no, it's probably not going to be that. That's why you see Ranger Suarez all the way down at 92. If you want to take a chance on that, that's cool with me. Just don't hold on too long, because you don't know when it's going to come back. You don't know how long it's going to be when it does. You know, the idea that, oh, cool, this is the run now before the 3rd start or something. Yeah. Or, oh, cool, now it's done, as opposed to like just 1 start. Is that it? It's really tough. And I generally don't want to deal with it. Yeah, I'm out for the most part. And I hope he goes on a magnificent run again and everybody yells at me. That'll be nice.
He will. Just bank it. It's going to happen. We talked on some earlier episodes about injured pitchers who are coming back middle of the season, summer, whatever, who have some upside. I think that Yuri Perez is another one to add to the list. Yuri Perez did have Tommy John surgery at the beginning of April, so theoretically he could return at the start of the year, but I think it's probably more likely we see him around May or June, given his age and the fact that the Marlins don't necessarily need to rush him. So is this ranking suggesting that you like Yuri Perez, but he's not going to start the year on time? You're not sure about Yuri Perez? Where are you at?
Well, okay, so now we have this little mini tier of guys. There are 4 of them. One will go into the next episode. But the long story here, made very short, is, you have IL spots, use them. And these are the guys you should use them on. These are ones that the second that they return, they can be the talk of the town. Everyone will be upset that they didn't have them. Kind of like how it was with Robbie Ray this year. You wanted to have Robbie Ray when he came back. Yes, he wasn't as good later on and he got hurt. You wanted Jeffrey Springs when he came back too. These are the ones that aren't Spencer Strider and friends. So Yuri Perez, it might not be the season at all. It might not return. Be aware of it. You should also understand that you need the roster spots in April and May, and be so disciplined that if there's no news whatsoever on this, you can drop him and then pick him up later. I get a lot of questions also when I do the list of like, oh, is this the time to go and pick this guy up? And I say yes, but do not sacrifice wins in your head-to-head leagues. Do not sacrifice points off of Roto for this potential value later. Value now, 2 times worth, value later. So at this point, I say, look, just draft them in the beginning, put him in your IL slot. The second that you need that spot in the beginning with no clear direction of when they're coming back, you let him go. But Yuri Perez, we all know the talent. He's a top 20 potential guy, not like top 5. Throws super hard. He has 7 feet of extension, 17 inches of IVB, and 1.2 height adjusted VAA at 97.98. Like, it's an absurd fastball. His PLV in 2023 was a 5.42, and a slider and a curveball that also gets whiffs. He needs a little bit more polish on those. I was really excited to watch him this year. We're not going to, but when he does appear, can't wait. Can't wait. He's going to be great.
Can't wait. I can't wait to get to the rest of these starting pitchers, but we're going to do that after this break. 30. We're starting to glitch a little bit over here, but I don't know what's going on. Okay. Yuri Perez, we know, returning likely in the first part of the season. Kyle Bradish seems destined to return in the second half of the year. We know he got hurt at the beginning of the year, was recovering without surgery and trying to pitch through it. Wound up needing Tommy John surgery towards the end of June. So I feel like July might be a little bit of a kind of like when you should be expecting him to come back. Maybe it winds up being later. So again, this is kind of going back to like leagues where you have an IL spot, you can draft him and stash him, and then you may need to cut him if you need those spots early. But in any league without an IL spot, you're obviously not drafting Kyle Bradish. Unless you're like starting up a keeper or dynasty league, because obviously he's not going to pitch until July at the earliest.
Right. I mean, it's the same kind of thing with Yuri Perez. I mean, obviously Bradish is later, but it's a case where, look, this is an IL spot. When he does return, we'll figure it out. The thing that I have wondered about with Kyle Bradish is what he's going to do against lefties specifically. There is a slider obviously here that is great and ridiculous, and he only throws it 21% of the time against them, but is absurdly effective pitch. And it got better in 2024. With that same usage in 2023 at a 40% ICR, in 2024 it was a 20%, and destroyed guys at a 70% strike rate. It was just so good. He also moved to a sinker away from his 4-seamer that had cut action, was just ineffective. For the most part, leaned into everything with a sinker. It's a great offering. I see Kyle Bradish as a sinker that should be worse. That is, like, you're not allowed to have 2 good breaking balls in the slider and curveball, and also this sinker that doesn't allow hard contact on like the normal Cleveland Guardians blueprint. And he's on the Baltimore Orioles, which I think is really good, with Adley Rutschman behind the plate and a good offense and defense and everything. It's a fantastic situation, I think. And it's just not fair that he got stripped away from us the way that he did. I'm really excited about him for 2026. But yeah, I think when Kyle Bradish returns, it will be effective for your fantasy teams, especially if he has that slider field back. But we don't know. And so just draft him. Don't hold on too long. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. I will push back a little bit on your number 95th ranked starter, but we're picking nits here. I mean, that's not on the talent. We're talking about another injured starter set to come back over the summer. Your 95th ranked starter is Christian Javier of the Houston Astros. Listen, Dana Brown, the GM of the Astros, said that that his projected return to the rotation is late July. So to me, that means August. And so in almost any format, I find it hard to draft somebody who I don't expect to pitch until August. But again, as you pointed out, people were clamoring to add Robbie Ray, and that was around the time that he returned. And so there is some value depending on your league formats and where you are at, how many IL spots you have. But I wouldn't expect Christian Javier back until August.
Yeah.
And then remember, I said this before about just him as a profile. Like, we know he's pitched out of the bullpen before. We know he has had success. If the Astros are contending and they can get Javier back on their MLB roster in a multi-inning or a piggyback role before he's like fully ready to start, I could see that happening because he's proven he can do that before. It helps the major league organization. It helps the team contend. And so maybe you wind up getting Christian Javier back as like a 3 or 4 inning guy, and that has some value, but maybe less than you would normally.
Yeah, what's interesting about Christian Javier is that in 23 and 24, his side-adjusted VAA dropped from 1.4, which is why that fastball was just so effective with 18 to 19 inches of vert, to 1.1 the past 2 years, both in 23 and 24. It might be a sign that he was feeling ramifications in 2023, and then it really happened in 2024. I don't know. But then again, that's raising the arm angle and not lowering it. It's an interesting thing to follow when he does return later this year. And with Christian Javier, look, I just stuck all of the injured guys I see. Hey, these guys have legitimate upside of being a top 30 pitcher. And Christian Javier certainly is there. He's showcased that I can dominate my fastball. I have a slider and a changeup. Think like a better version of Ronel Blanco with a fastball that actually like can be absurdly good upstairs. When you look at the 2023 number, actually 2022 numbers of Christian Javier versus Spencer Strider, it was kind of the same situation. I've converted to a starter from a reliever, and Javier was actually punch for punch right there with him. Obviously, the hit per 9 being under 5.4 in that year was not going to be sustainable, but still the effectiveness of the fastball and the slider was incredibly exciting. So I'm willing to say, look, Christian Javier had a weird 2023, was hurt in 2024, and I'm curious what kind of version we get with him when he does return. I think you make a great point about, yeah, Christian Javier is made for the pen when he returns, and it might not even start this year. You might be absolutely right there. Actually, I would say you have a higher chance of being right than wrong in that scenario. This is also your IL spot. This is a free roster spot. Yeah. So when I look at my rankings, I say, yes, at the very last pick of the draft, do I feel I need to go for someone now because they'll get drafted later on in a couple spots? Or if I can, I will get this guy off the IL. And I will try to make my IL as stuffed as possible early in the year. Because, yeah, I know that guys are going to go there. Then I'll just drop Christian Javier when that happens.
Yeah. Know your leagues. Know your leagues.
Yeah.
And you also, and you got, and we also talk, like Nick and I will talk up more late round starting pitcher than you can draft in a 12-team league.
Oh my God.
And so after you do a couple, or you see like ADP come out when we get to like actual drafts and not draft and hold type of drafts, you're going to be able to say, hey, there are 2 starting pitchers or 3 starting pitchers that I like that tend to not go in any drafts. And so you could say, hey, maybe I'll just draft Christian Javier with my last pick, move him to the IL spot, pick up this guy who is usually not being drafted. And those kind of like roster manipulation things are worthwhile, because as Nick pointed out, when you then need the IL spot, fine, you can get rid of him. But maybe you don't. Maybe you wind up not needing the IL spot. You only you know your league, how many spots you have, how deep the rosters are, things like that. So it just gives you another potential option.
And have the discipline. I mean, do not do the strategy if you think of yourself like, oh, but it's already May 1st, and maybe I'll get this. No, be disciplined to drop the guy. I cannot express that enough. If you're really hurting in IL and you have a roster spot taken from another IL because you still have Christian Javier there, and it's June 1st and you still don't really have a clear timetable, just drop Christian Javier.
Yeah.
I really can't express that enough. You have to know yourself to be able to do that.
Drop him, move it on. And we are moving on to our final episode of the Top 100. So make sure you join us on that next episode. I am Eric Samulski, the Pelican.
I'm Nick Pollack, the Lion.
And we'll see you on more episodes of On the Corner. I'm going to turn a light on real quick because it's dark.
Yeah, go on.
Keep going.
We're almost there. Oh, Adam Lee. Future Toby? That is not. No. You're probably thinking hipster. Not Toby. No.
All right. I'm going to go. I already wrote 138.50 for some reason. So we're just going to go at 138.50 because I don't want to change it.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, cool. Hello and welcome to On the Corner, the official podcast of PitcherList.com. I'm your host, Eric Samulski, joined on this final episode of our 5x5 breakdown of Nick's top 200 starting pitchers. We're going to get through to 100 today. Nick, how do you feel about all we've done?
I mean, this has been great. I kind of love this format. I hope you guys do too. Please, obviously, leave us some feedback on it on Blue Sky, where I am right now. We actually have, believe it or not, we have a Pitcher List Media Blue Sky that is just our posts and everything. And then I have my own Nick Pollack at pitcherlist.com at Blue Sky. That is my own musings. So you can actually have those two separate now, unlike how it is on Twitter. It's pretty cool.
And I have mine. So you can follow me, Eric Samulski, on Blue Sky. I'm still on Twitter as well. But yeah, follow us there. So just housekeeping at the beginning, then we'll dive right in. This is the final episode of our 5x5 breakdown. If you're just listening to this, Nick and I broke down all the top 100, or will have broken down all the top 100 pitchers in his rankings 5 at a time. So make sure you go and check out those older episodes. And then we are, after a short break, we are going to have longer episodes where we look at some of the guys outside of the top 100 that we are most interested to talk about, or we're most bullish on heading into next season. So there will be a longer episode for those guys outside of the top 100. We're going to start this episode with your 96th ranked starting pitcher. As you mentioned on the episode prior, this was a mini tier of guys who are starting the year injured. It started with Yuri Perez and Kyle Bradish and Christian Javier, who were in the episode prior to this. And this mini tier ends with the number 96th ranked starting pitcher, Shane Bieber, who was downright electric at the start of 2024. And that Guardians team could have probably used him in the postseason. We don't really know where he's going to pitch next year. I think there's an assumption he comes back to Cleveland, but we'll have to see. We're probably not going to see him before May or June would be my guess, but we don't have a firm timeline right now. Do you think can we assume that what we saw at the beginning of 2024 is a level that Bieber can carry over, or because that was such an improvement from what we had seen before for him, is it foolish to just assume that carries over?
Yeah, the cutter was good. The cutter was cool. Slider was cool. Yeah. I just am sad that we didn't get more Shane Bieber, because it really felt like he was kind of going back to what he used to be with how good the slider used to be. Four-seamer was still at 91 and change, not like the 93 plus or whatever we used to see from Shane Bieber. And I do hope that him getting Tommy John does revitalize some of that velocity. Sometimes we do see that where you're just throwing the hurt arm and now you are fresh and ready to go. At the very least, this is just like the other podcast we were talking about where with Shane Bieber, hey, you're going to be healthy again and you should help when you do pitch. How much? I don't know. If you need that roster spot, you let him go. But Shane Bieber should help more so than the guys after this list when he does throw. So just have him on your team, and we'll see how this works out.
Yeah, I'm happy to take shares again. Obviously, but we will see where he winds up in free agency. But yeah, big in on Shane Bieber again. You're not as high on your number 97th ranked starter. For the record, if you missed it, there was an earlier episode, guys in the late 60s. There were some of the top pitching prospects in baseball. One of these guys, or this guy, is considered as a part of that group. But you are down a little more for fantasy purposes on your number 97th ranked starter, Andrew Painter of the Philadelphia Phillies.
Yeah. So what's actually really interesting about me doing this top 200 list is actually I begin the process of understanding prospects. And I feel that entering this year, I understood Skeens. I understood who Job was. I understood Jared Jones actually a little bit beforehand. I, had a better sense of, oh yeah, Landon Knack. I remember that from when I wrote about him in the Dodgers breakdown. And I start to grasp what makes these guys tick. And what's so wonderful is that this year we have our live data now from AAA, which allows us not only to see locations of pitches and what they throw, but the actual pitch metrics of these things. We're talking about all the things I love from IVB and extension and VAA, velocity. We also have our PLV grades for all of them, as long as they pitch in AAA or in the AFL. So with Andrew Painter, I didn't get any data until the AFL. And this is, by the way, accessible to everybody with PL Pro. It's one of the million amazing things we have at PL Pro, and you just got to get it and have yourself a field day like the Disneyland of baseball metrics. And I'm really surprised at what I saw from Andrew Painter. Now, I talked to some really smart people at First Pitch Arizona, James Anderson, who was right about Gavin Stone, and I wasn't entering last year. And what I saw from Andrew Painter was, yes, 96, 97. However, extension, really bad, like at 6 feet of extension. His height adjusted VAA, steep. His vert was under 15 inches. 15 feet. No, 15 inches. Yeah, of IVB. And wait, that's not good. That's not actually a good fastball at 96. What Andrew Painter did so well before his Tommy John surgery was command. This is what James Anderson was saying. It was like, look, command is the main thing with Painter. It's why he swept up the minors, is he's able to throw this fastball and then have secondaries off of it. And like they couldn't do anything at the velocity, whatever the pitch metrics were and all that kind of stuff doesn't matter. It's about the velocity and location and then the secondaries off of it. And that's okay. I can understand that. Now, you only had 3 starts at the time of me getting this data in the AFL. Could also be different moving forward. Could be improved, obviously improved command, but also the secondaries as well. And at the end of the day, I see Andrew Painter, who does not have this overpowering fastball reliant on command, with a new slider. I believe that's a bullet one that looks very good. The changeup could not be spotted, and I believe it was a curveball that was also around and can be very good. But that to me isn't like, oh no, this guy's going to show up in camp and just own it and then start for the Phillies. I actually even saw a plan saying they're going to start him in June so that they can work out the innings as well. And you add up all of that, it says, okay, like kind of like the Ricky Tiedemann idea entering this season was, I don't want to hold on to Ricky Tiedemann for a month or so. I don't want to draft and like have this empty roster spot and not knowing if it was going to be good. We got more clarity on Tiedemann before the season started about an injury anyway, and so on and so forth, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong on that, but long story short, unless it's Skeens, it's not worth it. And Andrew Painter is not Skeens in my view. Yeah. So I have him down to 97. And I'm glad Schultz may have a higher idea of getting there out of camp. Same with Bubba Chandler. Same with Jackson Jobe. So that's why those guys are higher up.
I'm glad you brought that up because James and Chris Clegg and Eric Cross are 3 guys I really go to a lot on prospect stuff. And so hearing James's thoughts really kind of solidifies a little bit of my opinion on it. I had seen the data on Painter as well and was like, oh, I wonder if this is consistent with what we've seen before. I think he's going to get a shot to crack the rotation in spring. We'll see. The Phillies could also sign somebody. It's definitely something to keep an eye on. In the offseason. Your number 98th ranked starter is somebody we've been talking about for years, who continues to kind of get in his own way a little bit. First, it was some command issues that popped up, then it's been consistent injuries. His home ballpark will always be an issue. It's left-hander, Nick Lodolo. We have to assume Lodolo is going to start in the Reds rotation next year. We know that Lodolo has the upside, to miss bats against both righties and lefties. We know that he can be a solid starting pitcher. We know that the home park isn't great, but at this point, we're now, how many years can we talk about the potential of a guy before maybe it's possible that we're not really just going to see it?
Right. So I do want to clarify that this tier is tier 12 after Shane Bieber at 96. We're now entering in 97 with Andrew Painter. These are the late round dart throws that I'm going to be paying attention to early on. But if I'm going to plant my flag, I'm not going to say that these are the ones I want to hold on to early on out of the gate. I think there's more volatility, more things to figure out that will make me less confident in them being the stud that we want them to be early on. So with Nick Lodolo, as you mentioned, injuries have always gotten to him. The home park isn't fun. He has shown so many moments of, man, I get it. I get that four-seamer going here, that back foot breaker that is like Chris Sale almost. And then you have the changeup that should be really good. The problem is that it's just not consistent. And I hope that Lodolo does get into that groove and just goes off on a 2-month stretch. You could also say that he hasn't had the ability to just have a full season and be healthy and be able to pitch. And that could be hindering him as well. Mm-hmm. I just feel that this is going to be a hipster headache-inducing pitcher stifling the entire roster that I don't want to deal with. And that's why I have him at 98. I imagine so many more are going to push him up higher. They say, Nick, if he's hurt, he's hurt. You move on. I get that. It's more about the per game performance of me just not knowing what it's going to be. And I don't think I'm going to get clarity on it, which means he's down to 98.
Yeah. Interesting fact I just saw earlier, Ron Chandler posted In 2019, 63% of all IL days were pitchers. In 2024, 74% of all IL days were pitchers. Just seemed fitting to bring up in our conversation of Nick Lodolo, who seems to always be on the IL. We're seeing a lot of pitcher injuries. I don't think Lodolo is going to all of a sudden become a healthier pitcher. We talked a lot about his mechanics and how that can add some strain as well. But yes, I'm always down for taking gambles on Nick Lodolo. I believe in the pitcher. I believe in the talent. One of these years, it's going to click. And so hopefully that's a year where he's on my roster. And maybe it's 2025. Who knows? We're going to get to a pitcher that Nick has been dying to talk about since probably the first episode of the offseason. We're going to do that after this break. Nick, your 99th ranked starter was somebody who jumped up on your radar late in the season, and you had good old heart eye emojis for, and it's Chicago White Sox starter Sean Burke. So there may be a lot of people out there who were out of their league contention by like the middle of August and who were only kind of like partially invested in fantasy baseball in September, who may not know who Sean Burke is or have seen, what he was doing at the end of the year. So I'm going to give you some free reign here. Just talk about Sean Burke. Obviously he's 99. So I'm being a little bit tongue in cheek in that Nick really loves him, but you were definitely intrigued by what he was showing late in the season.
The thing that brings me the most joy are pitchers who come out of nowhere to actually be relevant. And I think you guys remember my all of a sudden love for Albert Suarez in March, where it felt like the Orioles were running out of pitchers and they just found this guy throwing in a back alley. I was like, hey, you're starting today's spring game. Then all of a sudden he had like a good vert, or a not good vert, a high intent four-seamer. I didn't have any other data on it. And I was like working and actually hitting those locations. I was like, what is this at 96? I'm like, guys, this is remarkable. Then he had like a bad game. I'm like, fine. But there you go. Albert Suarez was very valuable at times during this past season. And players that just do something new that you just go, wait, hold on. If you didn't have the name here, you'd be like, oh, cool. This is great. It's Sean Burke, who actually, if you remember, I remember putting out a tweet in 2023 in like January saying, hey guys, who is the sixth starter for the White Sox? And no one knew. There was no answer. And eventually, like on March 15th, the White Sox said it's Sean Burke. We're like, who is this? And then he gets hurt. And then he's not there. And he misses really a lot of 2023. So 2024 comes around and we finally get Sean Burke. And what do I see when he appears in I think it was September. On September 15th, he had his first start. It's a four-seamer coming at 95 to 96 and pushing 97, 98. With 17 to 18 inches of vert at 7 feet extension and average VAA. It's 0.8, not great, but it's not like 0.4 for that vert.
Right.
And when you tell me he's going 95 plus with 7 feet of extension and that much vert on his four-seamer, you got my attention, especially if his locations are 62% high lock. That's 90th percentile. So fine, what else does he have? Sean Burke had a whiffable slider. This thing is a legit whiff pitch, 22% swing strike rate. You watch the guy, you're like, yeah, this is a good swing strike rate pitch, 67% strikes that we saw. There's also a curveball in the mix. Sometimes he has it, sometimes he doesn't. Okay. That is Sean Burke in a nutshell. Powering a four-seamer with two whiff pitches as breakers. What? Oh man, why does he have to play for the White Sox? Now, the benefit of the White Sox is that he's going to get time. I would be really surprised next year if Sean Burke isn't starting out of the gate. He was supposed to be their guy in 2023. They're going to deal Garrett Crochet. They have Jonathan Cannon, I apologize, and Davis Martin and Drew Thorpe and Sean Burke. That's their rotation, really. Who knows who they get back from the Garrett Crochet thing, but Burke will be involved in it. I'm not saying that Burke is the next Garrett Crochet kind of explosion of a thing. No, he doesn't throw as hard as Garrett Crochet, and that's pretty much makes that happen. The cutter is also so good for Crochet. Still, if you put this on the Dodgers or the Yankees or the Astros or Atlanta, he'd be easily inside my top 60. Easily. Because this is someone that, you have that foundational four-seamer and two breaking balls for whiffs. That's it. It's Reynaldo Lopez with a better third offering, I think, like a slightly better fastball. But I haven't seen it for stretched out for a full year, and it's the White Sox. Like, this is why he's down here, because I don't feel as if I need to risk my team on Sean Burke early in the season.
Right.
I don't think that he's going to go out there and go 6 innings with 10 strikeouts in game 1 or something like that. I'm so intrigued, though. I think he has a four-seamer that can be such an effective pitch. I think there's a slider and a curveball there that are amazing. He does need more polish when it comes to consistency of getting strikes on all three. But yeah, this is fun. This is like, oh, you actually have the talent, while other guys are still kind of figuring out all three of those pitches.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say when you were talking about, he's on the White Sox. It's like that enables us to get the opportunity to see guys like Sean Burke,
right?
And to see how he develops. I'm certainly intrigued by him. I will say, I'm never taking him over your top 100 starter.
Yeah.
Twins starting pitcher David Festa, and that because it's me. I'm just give me strikeouts, baby. Give me a guy where I can look at the arsenal and say, oh man, I'm gonna get lots of strikeouts here. David Festa was great in the minors. His first couple starts with the Twins were not great. He got a second chance and really kind of showcased intriguing stuff with that second chance. The Twins then started limiting innings. We couldn't really get like a strong 5-6 inning start from him was a consistent issue, right? Him being able to keep up high performances going deeper into games. It's a possibility he's a 2-time through the rotation type of starting pitcher at the major league level. It's entirely part of the risk profile. But I like the arsenal. I like the strikeout upside. I think he's going to at least have a shot at a rotation spot next year, at least, enter spring training battling for one. And so I like David Festa as a late round gamble, because to a point that you've made many times these last few episodes, if he wins the spot in the rotation, awesome. He's worth having on your bench. If you draft him and he doesn't win the spot at a spring training, you cut him, you move on, you grab somebody else. And those guys where kind of like immediately there's some value in taking flyers on them late.
So that's where my pushback is a little on Festa. And I see in the comments asking Burke over Birdsong, and I say yes, because I have less faith in Birdsong's command. I think that Birdsong is going to be a lot more volatile in being able to locate what he has. Does not have actually, I think, as good of a fastball despite the velocity than Sean Burke. And when you look at Festa, it's actually kind of similar of 94, 95 on the four-seamer, which is a little bit less than Burke, but still right there, with 7 feet of extension and 17 IVB with similar, slightly over the top and not as good attack angle. However, Burke has an amazing intent and location on his four-seamer upstairs. He knows how to do that. And even watching his mechanics, like it's more believable to me that he's able to go north-south and straight forward with those pitches. While Festa, watching him really was anxiety manifested. Sure. I watched a guy that could not put anything where he wanted to. And that went across all of his pitches, four-seamer, slider, changeup. There was constant battling with trying to execute as he wanted to. And I'm not saying that Festa is now prone to do this forever. I do actually think that there are times I watched him, I was like, oh, cool. Yeah, there was the slider. Great. There's the four-seamer and there was the changeup. Like, you can do this. And it could easily be the rookie season. I think I have less faith that a good start from Festa is a good start moving forward. And in him getting the number 5 spot could still very well be a hipster kind of performance moving forward, or a hipster kind of player moving forward. Then I can very well see Sean Burke getting into that groove and staying there longer. I don't know if that's really truth. I'm just very small sample size of Sean Burke, and Festa, I got to see more of it, and I felt that anxiety internally every time I watched. Also, you made a great point about the Twins. Twins are strange. They generally go half of their pitchers. They trust to go 6 innings and third time through the lineup. And the young ones, they say, no, we're going to save some for the bottom half of our rotation to say we're going to pull you after that's where the relievers should be used. And I feel like Festa will get limited more than Burke will. This was me putting it 99 and 100 and trying to figure out the two. Burke, obviously, with the White Sox. Festa also just higher pedigree in general. And there could be more that's unlocked and stabilized, and there's more confidence, I think, across the league that he will. So I need to take that into account. I likely will not have either one on my teams. I think also we'll get more clarity in March to see how they are performing and just what is working, what isn't, how are the teams utilizing them, that kind of thing. So Festa, I want to like so much. I just find it harder to believe that he'll be in that command groove, that you'll be really happy in a 12-teamer that you have drafted David Festa.
Yeah, I think my strategy when it comes to like decisions like this with guys like Burke and Festa, and it could be wrong, but I look at Festa has a clearly better minor league track record.
Yeah.
Tons of minor league success to his name. I think that inconsistencies and struggles in the first taste of the major leagues is not a deal breaker, which I know you agree with for any pitcher. And so I'd like to then believe that a guy who has shown he could do it at the high level of the minors can be able to adapt to the major leagues. The things that he was able to get away with in the minors that he wasn't able to get away with in the majors, he can then kind of like learn and grow from that and has a better chance. I'm not saying he will reach the level he reached.
No, I
in the minors,
understand.
but has a better chance of reaching that level. And so that's why late in drafts, I will take a gamble on somebody like a David Festa over somebody like a Sean Burke. And again, it's not a locked in, like you have to do it this way. It's the way I do it. And sometimes I get burned on it too.
This is, you get burked. This is the one thing I ask everyone to do. Find a way to do this, but watch Sean Burke start Sunday, September 22nd against the Padres all the way through, and you will understand where I'm coming from. That is all I need to say. Watch that game, and then we can talk. Yes, that is a sample size of one game. However, that is an amazing Padres offense. And the dude struck out the last two batters he faced at 97 miles per hour with 87 pitches on the night. It was awesome. It was just, I mean, the roundup review I wrote of that one, like literally the first two words are capitalized: Sean, period, Burke, period. I ended it in caps. I love this. You know, like it is the most, I said, the man is a dude. I get this way sometimes in my roundup of just like trying to showcase all the, oh my God, that was so much fun to watch. And I didn't really feel that with Festa once this year. And maybe I missed the start that I should have watched more closely and all the way through. I watched Sean Burke's all the way through because I was just so curious. And it was fun. It was so fun. So that's how I'll leave that one. But I mean, again, have them all the way down here. So many reasons for that to go wrong. That at least showcase why, like, that one game showcases everything. I think it's September 22nd, 2024, Sean Burke at San Diego. Just watch that start however you can, guys. You should do it.
I'm glad we ended with this kind of like back and forth, because it's a perfect setup for the next episodes where we look at like guys outside of the top 100 that you and I are intrigued by or want to talk about, because you get into this ratio, you get into this section and there's a lot of comments, you know, about guys like DJ Hers and Mason Black and things like that, where like when you get outside of the top 100, when you get to even outside of like the top 80, really, like you're going to have your guys, that you believe in, your guys that you trust, your guys that you want to gamble on. And it's fun to kind of figure out what everybody's tendencies are, who they like to gamble on. And so Nick and I will try to highlight some of the guys that we are intrigued by outside of the top 100 on one of the subsequent episodes. And I think it should lead to some interesting discussions of like, you know, potential, like things we look for in starting pitchers.
Yeah, there are so many. The fact that like I had to put DJ Hers in tier 15 at like 131. But the thing is, Tony Gonsolin exists. I'm like, well, that was okay. Tristan McKenzie could do really well. Or I had to put Rhett Lauder at 117 and Nestor Cortez at 113, David Peterson at 112. And then there's Jeff Hoffman, who might be a starter, and Hayden Birdsong and Zenny Matthews and Jack Leiter and Caleb Killian. It's like, there are so many. This is kind of my point of just, there's going to be a ton on your wire. This is why you should just take those chances and the ones that you want to make decisions on so fast, because someone is going to be ridiculous and it's going to stick. So if you feel like you should go for someone like DJ Hers, who I see Uncle Ted here in the comments on YouTube, go ahead. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that podcast. It's going to be coming out later because I'm going to be gone for like 3 weeks essentially. So looking forward to that. And I can't wait to see you guys again in December. It's going to be great.
Yes. We'll be back for more episodes back then. As Nick says, bon voyage. I am Eric Samulski, the Pelican.
I'm Nick Pollack, the Lion.
And I'm going to get started on my postcard sending to Nick right now.
Bye-bye.